France Bleu Pays Basque. Les frontières espagnoles n'ont plus d'électricité. Une enquête est ouverte pour destruction volontaire. 15 000 manifestants. Ils réclament le droit à circuler entre les files de voitures. Une pratique interdite depuis le début du mois. L'amende 135 permis. Des affrontements et des gaz lacrymogènes hier à Paris en marge de la manifestation de génération identitaire. La police a dispersé les participants, place d'Enfer Rochereau. 1500 personnes ont défilé contre l'éventuelle dissolution du mouvement d'extrême droite. 2 morts et une trentaine de blessés pendant les manifestations anti-coup d'État en Birmanie. Ça s'est passé à Mandali, dans le centre du pays. Le secrétaire général de l'ONU condamne l'usage de la force meurtrière. La finale de l'Open de tennis d'Australie ce matin, le numéro 1 mondial Novak Djokovic et double tenant du titre affronte Daniil Medvedev. C'est à 9h.
Dite à risque. Le président de la Fédération internationale de football, la FIFA.
Not a sign of it, huh? What is it? Strictly enough to kill a horse. Now I ask you, Hi, could any dog resist a steak like this, huh?
It was midnight, as dark as it would get in June. The sun had set an hour ago and would rise again in another hour. Ike approached the run and back of headquarters carefully. The dogs were asleep. There was no one around. He could see King in the first run. He touched the package beneath his coat. Now he was at the fence. Once more he looked around. No one in sight. He called softly, King. King stirred in his sleep.
Wake up, King.
The great dog opened his eyes. A low growl sounded in his throat, but it was an indecisive growl. He didn't know this man. He would let his actions prove whether he was a friend or not. The man took a paper parcel from under his coat and unwrapped it. The delectable fragrance of fresh meat reached King's nostrils. The man held out a caribou steak.
This is for you, King. I brought you something to eat. There you are. Nice steak.
King sniffed the meat and looked back at the man. One of the other dogs woke up and smelled the meat. He made a lunge at him. But King snapped at him and drove him back.
That's right, King. Keep it all for yourself.
King continued to watch the man.
Go on, eat it. It's all yours. I won't try to take it away. Go on, King.
King made no move.
Now, what's the matter? Won't you eat while anybody's watching you? You're not like most dogs. No. I better get out of here. I can wait for the proof of the pudding.
King watched the man until he was out of sight. Then he crouched down and sniffed the meat once more. We'll continue our adventure in just a moment.
En plus d'être venu, j'allais dire, pour constater sur place l'organisation.
Can sell their home. That may be true in this market, but what's also true is you can lose tens of thousands in
fois contre le Mozambique, déjà éliminé. L'occasion pour un certain Étienne Eto'o de s'illustrer pour sa première titularisation. Le fils de la légende Samuel Eto'o a inscrit un doublé qui a largement contribué à la satisfaction du sélectionneur Christophe Ousmane.
C'est une satisfaction. On s'était promis de terminer cette première phase en beauté. Ça a été le cas avec une série sur le gâteau avec 4 buts remarqués. Je pense qu'il faut féliciter ces enfants. Ils se sont bien battus et encore une fois de plus bravo à eux. La suite, il est question pour nous déjà de très bien récupérer et oublier déjà le premier tour. Essayer de regarder ce qui n'a pas marché durant ces 3 rencontres et penser déjà au quart de finale en espérant que ces quarts de finale aussi vont nous sourire comme l'a été cette première phase.
Christophe Ousmane suivre aujourd'hui les 2 derniers matchs du groupe B simultanément à 19h TU. Le Burkina Faso affronte la Namibie et n'a besoin que d'un nul pour se qualifier. En revanche, la Centrafrique devra battre la Tunisie pour espérer s'en sortir. Et sélectionneur des jeunes fauves, Sébastien Gatto a bien compris l'enjeu.
C'est un match de va-tout pour nous. C'est une finale, c'est un seul match. Celui qui va gagner va continuer dans la compétition. Donc je pense que ce serait une belle affiche. Moi, je pense que sur le plan africain, l'équipe de la Tunisie, c'est une bonne équipe. C'est pas ça qui va nous empêcher de faire asseoir aussi notre jeu.
Protecting his business community friends, and frankly, he's screwing them because people are going to work. And instead of paying sick pay, you are now risking the entire workforce.
The Morning Show, weekdays at 5:30 a.m. or anytime from Apple and Spotify podcasts. We are 640 Toronto.
Hey, Gugu. What do you tell a teenager about cannabis?
Okay, I'm playing
Haboot Canopy. Music.
Okay, Cuckoo, stop the music.
Looking for tips on how to talk with your teens about cannabis? Visit drugfreekidscanada.org for more tools to help start the conversation. drugfreekidscanada.org.
You're listening to On Point Weekend with Alex Pearson on Global News Radio 640 Toronto.
All right, here we are. And could we see what is happening in Texas happen here? I mean, it sounds kind of funny, but if you haven't seen the pictures, they are suffering this once-in-a-lifetime cold snap that's got them buried in snow because the power grids collapsed, and they're now in the cold and the dark without water, and people are dying. And if you think that can't happen here, well, it could. And this is not getting nearly enough attention, but it should, because the deadline for the cancellation of Enbridge Line 5 is drawing near. And the governor of Michigan wants the 68-year-old gas and oil pipeline shut down by May. And this is not just something that employs thousands of people across southwestern Ontario, but it is a huge power. It's a huge power source for both Quebec and Ontario. And without it, we will face not just massive fuel shortages for things like planes at Pearson and your car, but it would be a huge effect on our heat, lead to crushing job loss. And Premier Ford says he has calls into the governor, and so far he's been met with radio silence. Laurie Goldstein is a Toronto Sun columnist, and I know you have been watching this issue very closely, and I know it kind of sounds crazy that we could find ourselves in the dark, but that is how detrimental this pipeline is.
You know, compared to the amount of tonnage of coverage on things like Keystone, this one is sort of snuck up. But it's very serious. I mean, we're talking about the energy supply and jobs in 5 different jurisdictions: Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Ontario, and Quebec. The Premier has said that one problem he sees, and it's in his writing, is that fuel supplies to Pearson Airport would disappear. I guess leading to the potential shutting down of travel. Not intentionally, but because of this. The mayor of Sarnia says thousands of jobs will be at risk. I think he said 5,000. But given, the necessity for it is a given, why there's this sudden urgency from the Michigan governor is inexplicable. For some reason, they won't take our garbage. It's been operating for more than 60 years. Its supporters said it's never had a leak. Its critics say it doesn't. But look, it hasn't had a major disaster. And Enbridge is willing to spend, I think it's $500 million now, they're going to spend to put in a tunnel where the pipes can go to make it even safer.
That doesn't make it safer.
Michigan apparently
that
just
puts it
proved
right
that.
in the ground.
So, all right, let's get this straight.
You can't clean
the company is aware of the concerns of Michigan, and in responding, it has said they will spend hundreds of millions of dollars, basically putting it into a tunnel under the sensitive water area. And the government has said, that's great, let's do that. But until that's built, we need this line to continue as it has for more than 60 years. So I don't understand what the hysteria is in Michigan. Like, what possible reason is there for this? And of course, Enbridge is going to challenge it in court. They've already said, look, we're not shutting down that line. We're going to go to court. Reasonably, one would think that a court would put a stay on the Michigan ruling because it's been given so little notice until they resolve the thing in court. Frankly, by the time these things resolve in court, they may have the tunnel built. But you could never rule out that court will say, no, you got to shut it down. The ground, so suddenly in May, away, so you won't see because all the other things that are killing our economy, this could conceivably happen.
This guy's an expert
and I just think, in all honesty, Alex, I just see this in politicians all across North America. This hysteria and this belief that
what did they say? That's
we have to suddenly cut off all fossil fuel energy supplies, like within a decade, GM said they're we're all going to die from global warming. Number one. And number two, that the belief that the world is abandoning oil and gas at a rate that would allow this stuff. This is utter nonsense. People have been predicting peak oil for more than a century. It has never happened. The United States leads the world in its production and export of oil.
So when oil was first discovered, it was oozing out of the ground here.
and along with
And
Canada,
it was toxic
is one of the
waste that had
top
to be spent money on to dispose of, meaning it had a negative value when it started. So it never been negative before. Interest rates have never gone negative before.
Yeah, but to your point on the
blah,
political
blah.
side of it, I mean, Green leader Mike Schreiner, he said, this should be a huge wake-up call to Ford because, with automakers committing, to electric fleets and, fossil fuels are clearly, a thing of the past. But the bottom line is, they're not going to be a thing of the past.
But they won't tell you how they come to that conclusion.
If this pipeline were to be interrupted in any which way, I mean, we'd be thankful it's in May because at least it wouldn't be freezing cold.
Right, that makes a lot of sense.
It's going to take time to do the transition, and we need power.
We don't make electricity for air conditioning from natural gas
until we get those alternatives.
And more people don't die from the heat than the cold every
I've
year.
met him. I like him. I think he cares about the environment. But then there comes
and again,
reality.
they'll put a woman as the head of the show as
Going
long
to
as she's
electric
stupid.
cars
They'll
means
feed
the
her story after
electricity
story
has to be
that makes women
provided
look stupid to
for the cars.
perpetuate that myth, too.
One of the main components
different than
now
CRI.
of providing electricity,
CRI
and it's been very successful in the United States, and we do it a lot in Canada,
She blabs all the
is
time
we've used
about
natural
China.
gas to replace
They're
coal.
hurting men.
Because
They're
natural
hurting
gas
white
burns at half the
English-speaking men.
intensity
That's
of
horrible.
coal. It's less polluting, and it doesn't emit half the greenhouse gases. If you start saying that you can't use natural gas for electricity, well, that's how Liberal government in Ontario eliminated 25% of its energy power that came from coal. If you start eliminating natural gas plants in Ontario,
knocking the coal plants
you're going to have
down
a
was a
huge
problem.
with
Why
the power
can't you
supply.
just put your gas turbines in there?
The reason the provincial government, the previous one of Dalton McGuinness and Kathleen Wynne, built so many gas plants was because they needed them to back up wind and solar power. Why did they need them to back up wind and solar? Because the wind doesn't always blow, the sun doesn't always shine, and we can't store electricity at industrial levels. When we get a battery that can store electricity at the levels needed, like let's say right now in Texas.
You can buy that shit right now for your house, but it doesn't exist.
Game changer. That makes wind and solar
when we can do this. We've been hearing this since 1990.
But until that happens, I'm going by what the politicians want.
The story used to be, if I can't heat my house for less than 1/3 the price with natural gas instead of electricity, I'll heat my shit. That was the quote in the 90s.
Natural gas.
Now it's not about
Apparently
the
that's not good enough
price.
anymore. It's not good enough for the United States to have dramatically lowered its greenhouse gas emissions. Far better than the world, by the way.
666
Far
is
better than
the
Canada.
number for carbon.
Far more significantly, they've hit the targets of UN agreements they never even signed on for, compared to us, where we signed on them and missed it. And so, I just look at what's going on, and it's irrational hysteria. There are ways to do this. It's good to lower our reliance on fossil fuels. I agree with that. In Canada, what we've done, less than 9% of our electricity comes from coal. It's because we use, well, first of all, we're blessed with hydro. But in Ontario, for example, natural gas and nuclear power replaced coal. Then what do the crazy environmentalists say? We can't use nuclear power. Well, there's a guy who wrote
first reactor you built blew its roof 4 feet in the air.
It's called Power Hungry. I believe his name is Robert Bryce. And he put it in a nutshell. He said that if you are anti-carbon and anti-nuclear, you are pro-blackout. And that's what can happen here. Now it's not happening immediately. It's till May, and then there'll be a court thing and all that. But I honestly think we have too many politicians and frankly people in the environmental movement who think
reaching
that
out to the old people.
Degrees
that target
give
market
them an
is
understanding
gone,
of energy issues. And I'm an English major. I don't have that technical knowledge either. But I've been reading a lot about it for about 15 years. When I started getting
obvious, bottom line,
and when you see the stuff,
we can't rely on this or that because obviously, bottom line.
Are
explain what you're talking about.
Oil companies. They're research scientists. Of course, look, they want to lower their emissions.
Lighter than aircraft don't
for them
need
to
nearly
lower
as
their,
much
to
fuel
lower
as
their emissions. Everybody
jetliners.
knows that. You get massive government
And they don't fall out of the
subsidies.
sky.
Like everybody who's responsible is trying to do this.
Nazis.
But politicians keep
So
changing
Nazis
the rules
use 9mm, so do
and
your
creating
cops, so
crises
you don't
where
talk
none
about that.
exist. Like in Canada, to me, we're one of the few countries in our world that wants to cut our own economic throat. We have this blessing of all these natural resources, and we want to keep them in the ground. Like it doesn't
No, that's not the question.
any sense.
Why are you subsidizing
Well,
it to
it
sell
doesn't have to, so whatever this stunt
And
is,
it's
I would
ours
like
to
it
determine if it stays
put
in the
away,
ground or
and
not. If
hopefully
you're
the
not
Premier
paying
can
us the
finally
money that
talk
you're
some sense
collecting
into
from
the
these
governor, but we'll
companies,
see what
where's
happens. But
the
again, this
legality
is
of that?
really
They
detrimental
will
to
tell
us.
you they
So
give
the
us the
point
money
is,
from
we can
that.
do
We
good
say, okay,
things
where is it?
to
And they
lower
won't
pollution. We
answer.
can
The
do
Supreme
them,
Court said
but
they
you
have to
can't
give it
do
to
them in
us.
this atmosphere of hysteria and insanity.
Right. I mean, if
It's
you want to live with no
insanity.
power, you're free to turn it all off right now. It's very cold, though.
Insanity.
On that note, Lori,
Wow.
I gotta go. I'm up against the clock. Appreciate your time always.
Always
Yeah, she's
happy
only
to
got
talk. Take
5
care.
minutes of commercials
Thank
to
you.
run.
There you go, Lori Goldstein. So we'll keep an eye on that because it is a really, really consequential issue and it ain't getting any attention right now. Here with us, Alex Pearson on point, and this is Global News Radio.
In a brave new world.
Brave new world.
No reason why your partner might not be involved in it.
That other commercial's weird too. The subject. They're referring to a child as a suspect and saying he's bending over trying to
Just
shoot.
getting
You
warmed
can't
up.
bend over
Big
and try to
Brother
shoot.
Canada rises. New season Wednesday, March 3rd on Global. Also available on Stack TV.
Canadians Entertainment.
At Guildhall Wealth Management, we pride ourselves on being the leading, most recognized gold and silver bullion dealer.
Et ainsi polliniser la fleur d'à côté.
Les sabots de Vénus sont des orchidées originaires des régions tropicales d'Asie. Tous se cultivent en intérieur. Chaque fleur dure longtemps, entre 2 et 3 mois. Certaines espèces offrent une fleur par tige et d'autres plusieurs.
On with you. And, you know, you write your story and maybe someone goes, oh, you know, thank you for writing that story and exposing that story. Or someone says, oh, your story was excellent. And you feel like, oh, I'm a good journalist. But what it does to you after several years of reporting on these stories, it can really eat you up. And I have found that, you know, self-care feels almost indulgent in a society like ours where there is so much trauma. I mean, you know, there are so many families that have experienced so much trauma. And then you think, well, do I, as the journalist writing about those traumas, have a right to feel traumatized by in a secondary way by hearing those
Toronto
stories?
Police.
But then you realize that it happens insidiously. And
So we got this thing here, the Victims Compensation Fund. The Toronto Police are known for applying and getting more often more money than actual victims do for simply taking the reports of crimes. I was so traumatized that I am a victim of the crime, even though the victims themselves didn't apply for money. And here's the false narrative. The female journalist going, do I have the right to feel it? Because feelings are a woman's issue. No, it's a false narrative. The women are dumb issue. So that was KCRW, and I'm not sure what program that was. BBC. So BBC, Talk Radio 640, CRI. They all just did the same fucking thing. They'll all let women host the shows if they keep telling them to say things that are dumb. So you will think and perpetuate that myth. Women are too stupid to make decisions. Right.
Prizes directed by Fred Flowerday and supervised by Charles D.
Because they
Livingston.
got handpicked.
The part of
for
Sergeant
being
Preston
a puppet,
is played
somebody that'll
by
just repeat
Paul
what they're
Sutton.
told.
They are brought to you every Monday, Wednesday, and
they
Friday
can't
at the
figure out
same
how other women
time
can't get
by
by in
Quaker
world.
Pop Wheat and Quaker Pop Rice. The breakfast cereal shot from guns.
Les valeurs vont comme hier se situer partout entre 8 et 10 degrés cet après-midi au-dessus des normales, voire un peu plus sur le Pays Basque. La situation générale ne change pas par rapport à hier avec le maintien d'un ciel maussade sur l'ouest de la Bretagne, également sur le Languedoc et le Roussillon, et d'un temps sec sur les autres régions, malgré un ciel plus voilé entre le sud-ouest, l'Aquitaine et la basse Normandie, avec un vent très turbulent sur les régions méridionales de l'ordre de 90 km à l'heure autour de la Méditerranée, 120 sur les Pyrénées et le sud du Massif central et 100 à 120 km à l'heure pour l'OTAN de la plaine toulousaine à la Montagne Noire.
Allez, très bon dimanche à tous dans cette douceur et sous ce très beau soleil. Il est 7h.
France Info, 6h, 10h, je te kiffe.
L'info à 7h avec vous, Stéphane Milhomme, bonjour.
Bonjour Jules, bonjour à tous.
Cette question ce matin pour les Niçois, vont-ils être reconfinés?
C'est l'une des pistes avancées. Réponse ce soir face au nombre inquiétant de nouveaux cas de coronavirus. Il y a déjà eu des reconfinements locaux en France, nous expliquera Solène Lehen dans un instant. Des universitaires ne décolèrent pas, ils sont 600 à signer une tribune et réclament la démission de Frédérique Vidal, la ministre de l'Enseignement supérieur, fragilisée après ses propos sur l'islamo-gauchisme à l'université. Un ancien nazi extradé des États-Unis vers l'Allemagne, Friedrich Karl Berger, 95 ans. Il se dit prêt à coopérer avec la justice, mais pour l'instant, il est libre. Et puis nous irons à Nantes applaudir des artistes en vitrine dans des cafés, des restaurants. Opération pour divertir les passants malgré la fermeture des lieux culturels.
Avec la moitié de sa population vaccinée, Israël déconfine aujourd'hui et met en place un passeport vaccinal. C'est notre dossier à 7h40. Notre invitée Sylvie Briand, directrice en charge des risques pandémiques à l'Organisation mondiale de la santé.
Les habitants de Nice vont-ils bientôt devoir se confiner? Le préfet des Alpes-Maritimes doit annoncer des mesures d'ici ce soir. Devant ce constat alarmant, 500 Niçois et Niçoises sont contaminés chaque jour par le virus, le taux d'incidence le plus élevé actuellement en France. Olivier Véran, le ministre de la Santé, souhaite des mesures complémentaires au couvre-feu. L'une des pistes, Solène Lehen, serait donc un confinement local, mesure qui a déjà été appliquée dans des territoires d'outre-mer.
Le premier confinement local, c'est en Guyane qu'il a été mis en place à la mi-juin l'an dernier dans 14 communes. Il s'agissait d'un confinement le week-end uniquement.
And adverse reaction. Recipients who come to the site just need to breathe.
Now the news. I'm Zhou Fang. Citywide inoculation of COVID-19 vaccines has kicked off across Beijing in the wake of vaccinations for
3 months to ensure that anyone who's willing to get the vaccination can be inoculated.
Colombia has received the first batch of China's Sinovac COVID-19 vaccines. The country approved the emergency use of the Chinese vaccine over 2 weeks ago. More shipments are expected in March. The Sinovac vaccine has been authorized for use in several countries.
Military. In a statement, the company said it had removed the page in accordance with its policy on prohibiting the incitement of violence. It said the Tamador True News Information Team page had repeatedly violated Facebook's community standards on coordinating harm. The Burmese armed forces have used Facebook to advance their cause. People in Niger will vote today in the second round of a presidential election. The governing party's Mohamed Bazoum secured 40% of the vote in the first round and is viewed as the favourite to win. His rival is a former president, Maraman Osman, who tailed 17% in the first vote. Ali McConnell reports.
Niger's current head of state, Mahamadou Issoufou, is stepping down after serving 2 terms in office.
Senior Chinese diplomat Yang Jiechi, with the two sides vowing to boost cooperation. More shipments are expected in March. The Sinovac vaccine has been authorized for use in several countries. Earlier, its Brazilian partner suggested the jab is effective against the variants found in the UK and South Africa, citing test results in Chinese trials. Key indicators of COVID-19 transmission in the United States continue to fall, but health experts warn the public not to let down guard as the country sees uptick in coronavirus variant infections. The COVID tracking project indicates weekly new cases have fallen from 1.7 million at the national peak in early January to fewer than 600,000 this week. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says a total of 1,549 infection cases of coronavirus variants have been reported in the United States as of Thursday. Qatari Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani has met with visiting senior Chinese diplomat Yang Jiechi, with the two sides vowing to boost cooperation. Yang Jiechi says China is ready to work with Qatar to deepen cooperation in the joint construction of the Belt and Road Initiative, as well as in fighting the COVID-19 pandemic. He has also expressed China's full support to Qatar in hosting the 2022 FIFA World Cup. The Qatari Emir says Qatar is ready to enhance cooperation with China in the fields of energy, investment, digital economy, culture, and infrastructure construction within the BRI framework. The Chinese currency has retained its spot as the fifth most attractive currency for global payments by value in January, but with a larger share as a global payment currency. According to the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication, the renminbi's share in global payment accounted for 2.42% last month, nearly 0.3 points higher from a year earlier. Value of RMB payments increased by over 21% last month compared with that of December. Hong Kong is the largest market for offshore renminbi transactions, followed by the economies of the United Kingdom, Singapore, and the United States.
That doesn't count either.
Debris from a United Airlines plane fell onto Denver suburbs in the U.S. state of Colorado during an emergency landing on Saturday. Authorities
paradise in nature, and even in places where food is abundant, survival remains the top priority. A tropical coral community in the South China Sea. It's full of life and danger. The mantis shrimp has separate eyeballs and pupils.
What?
This allows it to be alert to potential threats from different directions.
Oh, I thought you...
It's also a lethal fighter. Although it weighs less than 30 grams, it can throw a punch whose force is thousands of times its weight in 2/1000ths of a second. But it only uses its iron fist in self-defense and hunting. Building a proper shelter is more important than anything else. For the mantis shrimp, the most effective method of survival is hiding in crevices, a skill it has refined over 200 million years. The octopus and mantis shrimp are known as the architects of the ocean. It must always be ready to defend its territory. Larger territory often means a greater chance of survival. The Gulf has rich resources, but limited space. As a result, different species sometimes work together, and the same species often compete with each other. This is a goby. His partner is cleaning up the room. Only his partner is not another fish, but a shrimp. The pistol shrimp can't see, but it can burrow and do the cleaning.
What exactly are they cleaning?
In return, the goby provides protection and even food.
So the shrimp can't see. I don't think they're working together. I think the fish has the upper hand in this one.
The two form a long-term symbiotic relationship. Gobies have excellent eyesight. They are always cautious with other species. But much braver when it comes to their own kind. This small and lone goby desperately needs a burrow and a hard-working pistol shrimp. But both the burrow and the pistol shrimp are already taken. Should it give up or fight for them? small goby has chosen the latter. Victory will require strength and courage.
The sound effects. The sound effects are just... I don't know what that is on here.
And A speaking to me from Myanmar's largest city, Yangon.
Yes, you can call her that. Actually, she's more of a companion to Mrs. Mueller since poor Mr. Mueller got sick.
What's his trouble?
What is this?
And just lost his senses. He's at the state hospital in Norwalk.
Mm-hmm. When did they send him there?
Let me see. This is March.
It's like the jokes about the sexy time. Sexy time only happens
you know what,
when
my
birthdays and stuff.
Yeah. You know what my wife tells me? She tells me this all the time. She says, you tell me I love you too much. She's like, it's too much pressure. I don't want to say it to you that much. You tell it to me too much. You have to cut back on the amount of times you say I love you. And then she gets upset. Like, she gets mad at me for doing it too much.
I have a solution for you.
Mm-hmm.
One of my audio producers, not on the show, but the guy who does my voice work for me, his name is Rob. And Rob taught me this because every time I would voice something with Rob, he would say to me, he would say, "That'll do." And I was like, "Really? That'll do? That's all? That's all I get is that'll do?" But then I've learned that if you ever want your partner to be grateful for the I love yous and the sort of kind gestures that you make all the time, just change it to "That'll do." How's how did you enjoy your time today when we went to the whatever? Yeah, that'll do. Yeah, let me tell you, the I love yous will be more. The I love yous are great.
It sounds like a waitress or a waiter or something. That'll do. Like, they're shooing you away, as in, I've had enough of you. I've had enough. I've reached my...
On a l'air de retrouver un peu la joie de vivre du début, quoi. Est-ce qu'on est parti pour un déconfinement? Ça serait bien. Je pense, hein. On est en bonne voie, ouais.
En attendant, Quentin, 31 ans, a ressorti son jeu de boules. Ça lui rappelle Marseille, sa ville qu'il a quittée 4 ans plus tôt. Et sur son visage, le sourire retrouvé.
On profite pour faire un peu de pétanque. Il fait beau ce week-end. Voilà. On boit un petit rhum arrangé, tranquille.
Le Covid-19, hein. C'était en 2017 et 2019. Des pangolins malais saisis en Chine, porteurs de virus du groupe SARS-CoV-2. Donc ça veut dire qu'il y a eu au moins 2 importations de virus en provenance d'Asie du Sud-Est par le passé. Et c'est lié en fait clairement ça au trafic des pangolins depuis l'Asie du Sud-Est vers la Chine. Dès lors que vous mettez en contact des populations humaines qui n'ont jamais été en contact avec ces animaux qui sont potentiellement porteurs de bactéries ou de virus, vous prenez le risque effectivement d'allumer la mèche qui conduit à l'épidémie.
Propos recueillis par Florent Guignard. Et puis cette avancée historique en Russie de l'ADN de mammouth a pu être étudiée. La particularité de cet ADN, c'est qu'il a plus d'1 million d'années, ce qui en fait le plus vieux matériel génétique jamais analysé. Ces échantillons sont 1000 fois plus vieux que des restes de vikings. Ils datent même d'avant l'homme moderne et l'homme de Néandertal. Récit de cette découverte avec Anna Huot.
Les fossiles de ces mammouths datent des années 1970. 3 spécimens, tous découverts en Sibérie. Depuis, ils étaient conservés à l'Académie des sciences de Russie. Et cette semaine, les chercheurs ont réussi à extraire de l'ADN de leurs molaires. De l'ADN qui date de plus d'1 million d'années. Un record, puisque jusqu'à maintenant, le plus vieux génome séquencé était celui d'un cheval, il y a 700 000 ans. Tout l'ADN n'a pas pu être séquencé en raison de son état de conservation, mais les informations obtenues restent précieuses. Les chercheurs ont découvert une nouvelle lignée génétique de mammouths. Elle aurait peuplé l'Amérique du Nord il y a 2 millions d'années. Ils ont aussi retrouvé des gènes impliqués dans l'adaptation au grand froid, de quoi en déduire l'apparence des mammouths, une peau épaisse qui recouvrait une couche de graisse. Et cette innovation est majeure. Désormais, les scientifiques pourraient en apprendre plus sur d'autres mammifères. Ils envisagent notamment de travailler sur des échantillons de bœufs musqués, ces bœufs aux longs poils qui vivent au Groenland et au Canada.
Voilà, explication signée Anna Huot. Vous écoutez RFI, il est quasiment 7h15 ici à Paris, 1 heure de moins en temps universel. Tout de suite, retrouvez Andréane Mélard pour RFI Matin. C'était le journal de Léa Bouton-Rivière. Merci d'écouter RFI Matin. Et bien,
Si vous nous rejoignez, dans quelques minutes, nous serons au Chili où Justine Fontaine nous parlera d'une guerre qui oppose en ce moment un syndicat de producteurs de lait et une entreprise de produits véganes. Vous entendrez aussi la chronique défense et enfin, juste avant le...
Par jour, si on voit février 2020, l'été 2020, et puis bientôt le printemps donc 2021, enfin février 2021 pour le jour qui nous concerne, le nombre n'a jamais été aussi élevé. En fait, l'épidémie court à plein dans le monde. On n'est pas encore en sortie de crise. Donc ça, c'est simplement prendre ses désirs pour des réalités, ce qui est tout à fait naturel pour un être humain.
Et il y a d'ailleurs une réalité qui vient le rappeler à ceux qui oublieraient ce qu'il se passe en particulier dans les Alpes-Maritimes, à Nice, avec la piste possible de reconfinement à l'échelle ultra-locale. Il y en a plusieurs sur la table, on ne sait pas encore lesquelles seront choisies, mais de nouvelles mesures, de nouvelles restrictions, ce serait évidemment difficile à vivre pour les habitants qui en ont connu beaucoup depuis un an, pour tous les Français.
Oui, parce qu'il y a une accumulation qui a fait passer une grande partie de la population française au moins dans le mal-être.
Nicolas Franck.
C'est comme ça que ceux qui sont sur le canal Saint-Martin ou ailleurs, les terrasses Le Mercier à Lyon, enfin, terrasses sauvages.
On vous a retrouvé, Nicolas Franck, est-ce que vous m'entendez? Psychiatre, chef de pôle au centre hospitalier Le Vinatier.
Wow, that's cold. So do you measure snow in like liters? Just kidding, of course. But
no, it's funny because people, the weather guys call centimeters, but people often say inches. But you know, it's great in today's world of being dramatic when you can say, "Oh yeah, we got 15 centimeters of snow," because you know 5 inches doesn't sound great, but 15 centimeters, it's a chance to sort of you know create a little drama in your life.
Yeah. So what did you say the temperature is in Winnipeg?
Minus 27. There is a wind chill factor of minus 38.
Ooh, okay. So 27 below is about 16 below Fahrenheit. And you said the wind chill is what, 38?
38.
Okay, and that means the wind chill would be 36 below 0 Fahrenheit, where you're about getting the way the equation equals itself up. Further south you get below 0. Man, 40. That is so cold. And how many days in a row would it be like that?
I don't know. We're probably about 7 now, maybe 9, 7, 7 for sure. This is cold for February. Yeah, basically. You basically just try to not go anywhere. But it's cold everywhere.
That's the way to do it.
I mean, Southern Ontario has been better in our broadcast area there. It was cold for a little bit, but now it's like minus 6, which I don't know, it's like 20, 21.
So is it common to have block heaters in your car in Canada?
Yeah, I'm surprised you know about that. That's cool.
Yeah, I had one on a Jeep I bought once. I didn't know what it was because there was this one electrical cord that would come out near the radiator. And I said, why in the world is there blood in the front of my car? And then I learned about the block heater. And I don't know why it had one in it. It just did. So I never used it, but it was there. And that's the only reason I know about it. But I figured when it gets that cold, you have to have it.
It's pretty standard fare for buying cars in Canada would be the old block heater.
Is that right? So when you go to the dealership, it's just a given, pretty much a standard feature.
Yeah, and all diesels up here have them for sure because when it's minus 30, trying to start a diesel engine that's cold, good luck.
So is diesel freeze easier? Is that what happens?
Well, there's all kinds of things. Yeah, because the fuel is different. There's all kinds of reasons why diesels don't light up. So there's all kinds of stuff going on with diesels that are far beyond me. I just know that they suck in the cold, and every time I've had one, they really suck in the cold.
So what kind of is it mostly natural gas, or what type of fuel would you guys use to heat your homes in the winter?
It depends on where you are in the country here. We're going to have to get going in a second, but the some electric heat on the West Coast. There's an awful lot of natural gas heat. Very few people use oil anymore. Only people who live in castles use coal. But for the most part, I'd say natural gas is probably the way.
Oh, man. We had this one cabin growing up. Fuel oil had a giant tank on the outside. That stuff was fun.
I love the fact that I get to live into the Canadian stereotypes for you.
That's
amazing. So, Ryan Recker, thank you so much, brother. We got to go.
All right, Shane Hewitt. Good to hear your voice. Have a great rest of the week.
Thank you, sir. You too. Ryan Recker at KMOX in St. Louis, joining us for some good conversation. And hey, West Canadians, we like to talk about all of our things that we like in Canada. Might as well live up to making the Americans believe that we are all from
Well, the weather is mostly dark, so I can't tell what it is. Mindlessness. I'm gonna do it in English because I can't handle trying to think right now. French brings me right back to school.
Welcome to Environment Weather Service. Bienvenue au service météorologique d'environnement. For service in English, press 1. For the city of Toronto, press 1. For the forecast, weather conditions at 1 a.m. Toronto, Pearson International Airport, partly cloudy, temperature -9, relative humidity 85%, wind west 10 kilometers per hour, wind chill -13, barometric pressure 103.1 kilopascals and rising. Toronto, downtown, temperature -7, relative humidity 77%, barometric pressure 103.1 kilopascals and rising. Toronto City Centre Airport, clear, temperature -6, relative humidity 75%, wind west-northwest 8 kilometers per hour, wind chill -9, barometric pressure 103.1 kilopascals. For the forecast, the Environment Canada forecast issued at 3:30 p.m. Saturday, February 20th for tonight, Sunday, and Sunday night. City of Toronto, for tonight, a few flurries ending early this evening, then partly cloudy with 30% chance of flurries. Wind northwest 20 kilometers per hour, gusting to 40, becoming light early this evening. Low -10, wind chill -7 this evening, and -13 overnight. For Sunday, a mix of sun and cloud, clearing late in the morning. Wind becoming south 20 kilometers per hour late in the afternoon. High -1, UV index 3 or moderate. Wind chill -15 in the morning and -5 in the afternoon. For Sunday night, becoming cloudy in the evening. Snow beginning before morning. Amounts 2 to 4 centimeters. Wind becoming south 20 kilometers per hour, gusting to 40 before morning.
Fuck off.
-4, with temperatures rising to -1 by morning. Wind chill near -8. Extended forecast, Monday, periods of snow or rain. High +2. For Monday night, cloudy with 40% chance of flurries. Low -2. For Tuesday, cloudy with 40% chance of flurries or rain showers. High 6. For
Rain
Tuesday
6.
night, cloudy with 40% chance of flurries. Low 0. For Wednesday, cloudy with 40% chance of showers. High +4. For Wednesday night, cloudy periods with 40% chance of rain, showers or flurries. Low -6. For Thursday, a mix of sun and cloud. High -1. For Thursday night, cloudy periods. Low -10. For Friday, a mix of sun and cloud. High 0. Normals for the period, low -7, high +1.
I'm just trying to figure out if it's gonna be enough snow to have to do anything about it again this year. All right, let's see. Let's hear how 5 inches is 150 millimeters again.
New installations, or you want to bring your calls? CEE. They'll set up a maintenance program to ensure your elevator has reliable, trouble-free operation. For a free quote, contact CEE Elevator, 905-428-8300, online at cee-elevator.com.
Remember the 70s? Coffee was only a quarter, disco music blasting in every club, and when the man pulled you over after a couple of drinks, all he'd say was, "I'll let you go this time, just drive carefully." Well, it's not the 70s.
Is this Dragnet?
The stairs, pretty faint. Let me see.
Marketing, and like we just see white people occupying space, and also because then too it's like if you were out in the kind of like in the middle of nowhere as a black person and there's only white people around. It does not feel safe. We went for a hike, and we were hiking as a group of black people, and it was weird. And people like looked at us, and we're just like, here was the group, so weird comments. There was a woman who was like all dressed in like, you know, Stars and Stripes regalia, and she was wearing a mask that said something like "All are welcome," and like pointed to her mask and was like, "I got this for you." You're welcome. You're welcome.
It was horrible. It was horrible. I mean, I think that's because the baseline assumption is that we're not. And so she felt that she needed to tell us that we were, which in fact sort of undermined her whole message.
Get flagged by AI. That's the only reason.
At all by that.
We can't forget the compounding of history and generational trauma, right? So, like, lynching, it was not lynching in the woods, was not lynching happened in the woods, rape happened in the woods,
being chased with dogs in the woods,
being chased with dogs, escaping from slavery, because the narrative around being outside has always been claimed by whiteness. There was never any, until maybe now, like some grand movement to kind of address all of that trauma and say, like, no, we can claim this space for ourselves. We can create our own narratives, activities in the way we want to.
And, you know, when I started telling my family, oh, I want to go camping and all of that, my grandmother was so resistant to that because her relationship to being outside was fraught. And it's because she picked cotton. She became middle class. And so for her, it was the inverse. It was the more privilege she got, the further away from that kind of outdoor activity she wanted, you know, to be. So it was like, why are you doing that? Why are you making yourself uncomfortable? Exactly. $2,000 to do it. We worked hard to, exactly. We worked so that we wouldn't have to do that.
There's also those in-group and out-group dynamics with black people who say to me, oh, will you hike or you go kayaking? And even the way that they change their voice when they say it, or they sort of other me as if I'm not black because I'm doing it. And I find that there's that peer pressure even within the community, questioning my own blackness because I do enjoy the outdoors.
For me, the healing power of the planet and the places that I go outweigh that fear and risk. I'd rather not be inside. It's always worth it. It's always better. But the tension and the weight that you carry, I mean, this is why black people die, right? This is why we have heart attacks. This is why there's so much stress. It's the stress of being black in America, which is beyond being a black person outside.
We need non-blacks to call non-blacks out.
Yeah.
You know when people are doing things. You know if you're in a friend group or in a social group and someone's giving someone a look or is not being as welcoming or isn't being as friendly. We need people to speak up. We need the people who don't look like us to use their privilege to say, hey, we don't do that. The outdoors really is for everybody.
Look like, yeah, okay. Hey, that's me.
Wait, are you ever been? It's nice in these flatlands of eastern Massachusetts to have a little bit of a hill.
I'm on Instagram with all y'all.
Yeah.
Well, the voices you heard there, Marty, Erin, Paula and Sholanda, they were hiking outside Boston in Massachusetts and speaking to our reporter, Paige Sutherland.
Can't outsmart stupid.
You're listening to Weekend from the BBC World Service. In a moment, I'll introduce you to my two guests who are with me for the rest of the programme. Before that, the latest news headlines.
Can't outsmart stupid. Preparation instructions. Preparation instructions. Listen very carefully. Empty can, drain, rinse, and add to your recipes. Drain the can, rinse out the can, add the can to your recipe. Right? Right? What if I was a robot eating that, reading that? They'd think that this was made for me and that the stuff inside was just to distract the humans. Can't outsmart stupid.
Distribution of the BBC World Service in the U.S. is made possible by American Public Media with support from Merrill. Merrill Guided Investing helps manage a client's portfolio. MerrillEdge.com/investing goals. Merrill Lynch, Pierce,
By the way,
Smith
rinse,
and
comma, and add to your
registered
recipe. Yeah, they put the
broker-dealer
comma
and
for the
investment
end.
advisor.
Very high in fiber, source of iron, gluten-free, good. But that one came from wheat. You 2-pack canned beans are healthy, hearty, and delicious. Carefully picked and cooked to perfection, these wholesome beans, peas, and lentils. Hey, there better not be peas and lentils in here. Are a quick and easy way to
It's
eat a balanced
6:30
diet.
GMT. This is Weekend from the BBC World Service.
You count
Still,
peas and
protests
lentils as
continue in
beans?
Myanmar despite the growing risks for those taking
Are
to
they?
the streets.
Somebody
Growing
must have looked
evidence
it
of a
up.
link between air pollution and infertility and the impact
Is that why
climate
they
change
put lead
has
smokers
had on
in
one
black
of
neighborhoods
Australia's
and keep turning off
wildlife
our fucking
sanctuaries.
air? Thank
That's all
you.
here on Weekend with me, Julian Warwicker, after the latest world news.
BBC News. Israel is lifting some coronavirus restrictions from today, with gyms, hotels, shops and places of worship allowed to reopen. But entry to these venues is being restricted to people who have been vaccinated or have recovered from the virus, with a so-called green pass as proof. In Australia, the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, has become one of the first people to receive a coronavirus vaccination in his country. A public rollout for the Pfizer-BioNTech jab begins on Monday. Thousands of people have again taken to the streets in Myanmar's cities to protest against this month's coup, despite the death of 2 protesters on Saturday in Mandalay. There, as in Yangon and in other cities, the demonstrators have been marching peacefully to demand a return to democratic rule. Facebook has deleted the main page of the Myanmar military. The company said it had removed the page in accordance with its policy on prohibiting the incitement of violence. The Burmese armed forces have been using Facebook to advance claims in support of their overthrow of the civilian government led by Aung San Suu Kyi earlier this month. People in Niger will vote today in a second round of a presidential election, which is expected to result in the first democratic transition of power since the country's independence from France in 1960. The daughters of Malcolm X, the African-American Muslim minister and human rights activist killed in 1965, have requested that the murder investigation be reopened in light of new evidence. A deathbed statement by an undercover police officer at the time of the killing, Ray Wood, alleges that the New York Police Department and the FBI conspired in the murder. Tennis, and Novak Djokovic will try to win a record-extending 9th Australian Open men's singles title later. The defending champion will play Russia's Daniil Medvedev.
Has left politics for So to focus on her children. I don't know what that means, but that's what it says.
She made to focus on her children's singing career.
Brian, do you know if she made it through or not?
Yeah, so the audition has happened, and it seems like as you would expect, it was a massive, whole chunk of the show that was overtly dramatic. She did make it through, though, by a vote of 2-1. She is off to Hollywood. I didn't listen, but I mean, sometimes they just push some people through to Hollywood because it propels the story through. So give it a listen. Yeah, that's not a person I would have expected to see on American.
Give us some good. Come on.
Or Chesterfield. Chesterfield, first with premium quality and best for you. Chesterfield brings you
Full of
great.
vitamins and nutrients. Even I'm trying to get food in me. It's so slow. That's why this one of the reasons I chain smoke.
Ladies and gentlemen, the story you are about to hear is true. The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
Charities, organisations all over the place. So yeah, trying to communicate the stories in science to help people understand ideas.
And if you focus on the stories, people just simply grasp it more effectively. Is that the thrust of it?
That's the idea. Yeah. So people aren't really moved by facts. People are moved by feelings. People are moved by narratives. They need to understand things in a way that sort of fits into the story that we tell ourselves about how the world works. Things have to make sense to us. They have to have a beginning and a middle and an end, rather than just trying to learn sort of a list of facts.
Jeffrey, your journalistic career has taken you pretty much to every corner of the globe, hasn't it? Is there one particular posting that always stands out when you think back?
Well, I started at the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation in Toronto, but spent most of my career on American network TV. And it sounds like a sentence, it wasn't. I spent 10 years living in Miami covering Latin America. And I have to say,
One of the great joys for me as a journalist is telling stories where other journalists aren't and being places where other journalists aren't. And Latin America is grossly undercovered as a journalist or by journalism. And so it really was thrilling to cover that region and to, I didn't speak a word of Spanish. I became pretty close to fluent and went to almost every country in the Americas. Funnily enough, covering the Chile mine rescue in 2010 was in a 30-year career was one of the real highlights because I was the first foreign reporter there in August of 2010 when those 33 miners were found alive.
Did you import Ontario wine or did you drink the local?
7 weeks later, it was the biggest spot news event in history. There were 3,000 other journalists and technical people and broadcast people around me in the Atacama Desert, one of the most remote places on Earth, for one of the most dramatic stories of all time. So that particular story just really resonates.
Yeah, and you're right. It will immediately chime with people when you mention it. It seems extraordinary that it was 11 years ago, doesn't it? But
it does, yeah.
Jeffrey Kaufman and Kat Arney with me throughout as we go to Myanmar at the start of this half hour. The funeral expected today in the capital, Naypyidaw, for the young demonstrator who died on Friday, becoming the first fatality in the protests against the military coup, which took place at the beginning of this month. Mia Thwate Kang was 20 years old. She'd been shot in the head during a demonstration in Naypyidaw 10 days previously. Well, yesterday, 2 more protesters were shot dead, this time in Mandalay, Myanmar's second largest city. Several others suffered gunshot wounds. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has condemned the use of lethal force and intimidation against peaceful demonstrators by the security forces. Bawan Zani is a Burmese exile based in the UK. He's a human rights activist and co-founder of the Forces of Renewal for Southeast Asia campaigning group. I spoke to him just after Mia Thwate Kang's death was announced and asked him if he was optimistic at all
journalists that got
about
killed
the
here
impact the
in the
protesters
past few months, year,
I
whatever.
am, but of course, I lived under the first military rule from 1963 to 1988. And so I had seen soldiers and what they had done to the demonstrators when I was a younger boy. And so I should qualify that when I say I'm void about the possibility of a positive and better change when the entire society stand up and stared down this massive killing machine we call Tamato or military. But at the same time, my feeling oscillates between being cautiously hopeful and optimistic, seeing all the younger generation, civil disobedience movement activists working with older generation, parents and grandparents and whatnot, and feeling worried for the possibility that there will come an eventual crackdown on the streets.
How much has that worry been added to by news of the first death among protesters, this young woman who was shot and has subsequently died?
I watched the video clip of her being shot essentially in cold blood. She wasn't even with the protesters. She was trying to hide and also leave the scene. But at the same time, I am more worried about the nighttime disappearances, kidnappings, house raids, all of that happened under the cover of the night and during the now regular internet shutdown.
Those raids you describe, that does seem to be part of a policy, doesn't it? Stand back to an extent from the protests when they're so visible, but then act at night to try and get hold of the people who are orchestrating the protests.
Yes, this is a new strategy. Back in 1988, without the internet, without the society being interconnected with the outside larger world, Southeast Asia and beyond, the military acted with blanket impunity, gunning down protesters in broad daylight. But now, everyone has a mobile phone. Everyone can turn themselves into documenter of human rights abuses or shootings, or simply like citizen journalists. And also they are aware that the International Criminal Court investigation is ongoing into the crimes of genocide. And also they are aware the United Nations has allocated $37 million establishing crime archives specifically on Myanmar.
Nevertheless, we're not seeing any concessions from the military, are we? We're not seeing the release of Aung San Suu Kyi. So while everything you've just said might be true, it's not making them change their minds.
No, they are not going to back down anytime soon, despite everything I described. If anything, to the contrary, they have brought in rather draconian old-era laws, and also they have introduced Chinese-style cybersecurity laws. And so, if anything, we are looking at the regime that is digging in, but that does not mean that these signs are strengths of the regime. The regime today, compared to the regime in 1988, is acting and reacting from the position of weakness, not from the position of strength. When you have entire society that showed no fear of guns and clubs, I mean, like, you cannot go on forever. You cannot put this society back into the repressive bottle.
Maung Zania, Burmese exile and human rights activist. Jeffrey, I know you went to Myanmar many, many years ago. I'm told you were captivated by the country when you were there.
I went as a student backpacker in the 1980s after graduating from university in Canada, and it was at that point it was called Burma. It was an incredibly exotic and isolated place. You could only go in for a week. The infrastructure was really, even in the 1980s, was 50 years out of date. You often had to travel by horse cart in remote areas. It is a country of extraordinary allure, and the people are so resilient. At that point, they were under military dictatorship. This was before the 1988 student protests that we were just talking about.
Whatever happens, if these kids
this
run
is
into
so
the
familiar.
woods, there's going to be something for them to eat.
Followed Burma ever since, or Myanmar, and there was student protests in 1988. There was the Saffron Revolution of the Buddhist monks in 2007. This is a kind of cycle that Myanmar seems to go through: protest, government backs down, or government clamps down, more protests, and then you have, of course, the dramatic imprisonment of Aung San Suu Kyi, who went from hero to being reviled, but now she's in this odd situation of being under house arrest, and it's hard to read just how the world sees her.
This time, of course, the claim is that it might be different because the country has become more connected to other countries during the relaxation, if you like, of the military government, and you heard that sentiment expressed by our previous guest a moment ago.
I think that's true. I think that notion of isolation from 1988 and 2007 has really been transformed by mobile phones and by the ability to capture images and to communicate and collectively conspire, so to speak. And I think that makes it much harder to isolate people and snuff them out. The government is turning the internet off at night, but you can only do that for so long. And so it does give people a connection, a way to support one another. So it will be very, very interesting. It does feel like that despite the horror, the real heavy-handedness of the military rulers, they are on the back foot.
Kat, what strikes you about this as you follow this from afar?
So one thing that I have been following is the role that social media and Facebook have been playing in this, because even going back to 2018, there's questions being raised about how the military are using Facebook. And again, it's interesting in your story at the top of the hour, talking about how the Myanmar's military Facebook page has been taken down. And I think there are some really, really big questions about the role of social media companies in enabling these kinds of problems to spread, and sort of militaristic governments who use Facebook to suppress their population.
Well,
because
who is using it as well, to an extent, or at least trying to, haven't they?
So the social media is a force for good, it's a force for ill, and there seem to be big questions about, is anyone in charge of this, and how do you control
this, when in some ways it's net good, because it means that people can connect, people can show what's happening inside a country. But on the other hand, you can have the spread of misinformation, you can have the spread of sort of pages from the military spreading lies and genocide messages effectively.
You're listening to Weekend. Let's turn our attention